Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting on NYSERDA's proposed 2022 amendment to the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative Operating Plan. My name is Joan Kennedy. I work in Office of Communication Services, Bureau of Public Outreach at New York State DEC. I am very pleased to serve as your moderator for today's meeting on behalf of NYSERDA. NYSERDA's purpose today is to provide information on the funding assumptions, proposed budgets, and programs included in the proposed amendment, answer stakeholder questions about the proposed amendment, and importantly, begin the process of taking written comments on the proposed amendment. Next slide, please. Before beginning, I'd like to briefly go over some housekeeping details for this afternoon's meeting. First, please note this meeting is being recorded and that recording will be available on the NYSERDA website typically within 4 days at by the end of this meeting. So available on NYSERDA's website by late next week. Because of the large number of expected audience members, we cannot allow verbal questions or comments. We ask that you use the question and answer function as indicated on the slide to submit either questions or comments. I will pose questions to staff, but in the interest of time, I will not read the comments aloud. Comments submitted through the question and answer function will be recorded and treated as written comments. If you experience technical difficulties during this meeting, you can contact Tricia King, and her email address is on the slide. Tricia King at nyserda.ny.gov. Next slide, please. So with those housekeeping details out of the way, I'm pleased to invite opening remarks from NYSERDA President and Executive Chief Officer Doreen Harris, and from Department of Environmental Conservation Deputy Commissioner for Climate, Air, and Energy, Jared Snyder, representing DEC's Commissioner Basil Segos. And I think President Harris, you're first.
Great. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today to discuss the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative Operating Plan. We in New York are certainly moving forward with changing our energy landscape to meet our nation-leading climate goals and ultimately achieve economy-wide decarbonization. Our work proceeds in earnest as we implement our Climate Act here in New York State and get closer to our Climate Action Council releasing the draft scoping plan by the end of this year. We very much look forward to the public input process that will follow the issuance of the draft scoping plan later this year. And we certainly will look forward to your feedback on the pathways identified in the plan and how these pathways can put New York on a path toward the achievement of our 85% greenhouse gas emissions reduction by 2050 goal. We also hope to receive your thoughts on realizing equity, system reliability, and a just transition as we advance our emissions reductions statewide. And of course, these efforts are in addition to many Climate Act milestones that have already been met. And RGGI is certainly an important element of our state's decarbonization strategy, and indeed that of the region. So today, I'm happy to launch our 2022 program planning presentation with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Deputy Commissioner Jared Snyder, who will speak in just a moment. RGGI serves not only to reduce emissions from electric generation in the region, but also serves as an important source of proceeds that enable investments in energy efficiency, renewable energy, and carbon abatement technologies, guided by this annual plan. So the initiatives that we are proposing in the amendment will ensure that our approach for RGGI investments advance the goals established by the Climate Act while contributing to both emissions reductions and benefiting disadvantaged communities across the state as the law mandates. With that said, we are happy to provide an overview today of what's proposed for RGGI proceeds over the next 3 years. And I also look forward to your input so that we can put forth a plan that is sound and demonstrates the best use of these RGGI investments for New Yorkers. So thank you for having me, and I will now turn it over to Jared.
All right, thank you, Doreen, and thanks for that sort of summary of the importance of the Climate Act. You know, I think RGGI is an example of how we're moving forward, reducing emissions, at the same time as we're engaged in this planning process to achieve the goals, the very important goals of the Climate Act. And 2021 has been another good, successful year for RGGI. Let me just touch on a couple of highlights. Virginia joined the program, and we're in conversation with other states, including Pennsylvania, about expanding the program as well. In New York, we added peaking plants to the program in 2021, and that was the direct result of engagement with the public in meetings like this. And I'm also pleased that we're going to hear today about how RGGI investments are going to be meeting the investment requirements of the Climate Act, which are the investment requirements to benefit disadvantaged communities, which are very important to be sure that all New Yorkers share equitably in the benefits of this program. So another process is going to be starting in 2022, actually has started already, is the 2022 program review for RGGI. The previous program reviews that we've done have resulted in reductions in the cap to achieve greater reductions. And we're going to start that process in 2022. I believe there's stakeholder meetings next week to get input. And we look forward to continuing the progress we've made with RGGI to achieve our emission reduction goals, not just in New York, but across the entire region. So I hope some of you, will participate in those meetings as well. We intend to have additional New York-focused meetings in 2022. So, that's about what I have for an introduction today. I look forward to the conversation. I'm glad to see many familiar faces virtually on the attendee list that I'm looking at, and look forward to your input. Thank you.
Thank you, President Harris and Deputy Commissioner Snyder. Could we have the next slide, please, the agenda? Thank you. So today we're going to be looking at the funding assumptions, and we will have a review of the proposed budgets and proposed programs, as well as hearing about progress on addressing disadvantaged communities' goals. And we will provide an opportunity for you to submit written questions, as I indicated earlier, as well as an opportunity to submit written comments. We really want to hear from the stakeholders. Next slide, please. So for review of the funding assumptions and program budgets, we will bring to the microphone Pam Poussin, NYSERDA Chief Financial Officer. Pam?
And Joan, let me do an audio check real quick. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Fantastic. Hi. Thank you. So I will share a few highlights on the framing for our work on the operating plan, looking at our funding assumptions. Joan, if we might go to the next slide, please. Looking forward over the course of the next 3 years, which is the current window that this amendment covers, and in an effort to stay consistent with our historical posture of being conservative in our planning, we have in place right now an operating plan that assumes future auction prices averaging $8 in that window. That price is conservatively estimated based on a look back of the 5 auctions leading up through September of this year. So I want to be clear, it does not include the December auction, but included the latest data through the time frame in which this plan was assembled. As anticipated, and it would be best practice, we've increased that by a modest inflationary factor to arrive at this estimate of $8. Obviously, as we factor in the most recent auction and we turn to the current year's plan amount, we try to use the best data available for the current year. And so we have our historical prices for the two auctions in the early part of the year, and then carry that $8 assumption through the balance of the year. One thing I do want to note, having seen the latest auction, I want to remind everyone that while the prices have been trending in an upward direction, there are both historical trends to point to note that they tend to fluctuate a bit over time, and hence a conservative posture is warranted. Further, there are quite a few factors that are the drivers of the price, and none of them can be perfectly projected. So we want to make sure that we are being conservative in our planning. So that leads us to those pricing assumptions. If we turn then to the following slide to see how that translates into the total funding, the assumptions here, of course, are just a natural product of the number of allowances that New York has involved in the RGGI auction process, multiplied by that allowance price estimate. So you can see on your screen there for the 3 years associated with this planning window, so 22 through 25, we have auction proceeds ranging from $167.4 million in this upcoming year, and then as the allowances are stepping down over time, at least as currently planned, that translates to 153.3. So roughly over the 3-year window, that combined with interest earnings, given our assumption around those earnings at market prices and historical investment strategy, puts our 3-year operating plan budget roughly in the $508 million range. And then lastly, just to round out kind of the financial aspect of this to give you a sense of scale, if we go to the 2 slides forward, and we look at how this is then translated into the budgets, we are, as it was noted earlier, continuing forward with our multi-year operating plan approach. So this amendment addresses the next 3 upcoming years. We continue to aim for essentially a balanced budget each year so that the commitments for expenditures each year supported by the operating plan are aligned with what we anticipate those revenues to be at the end of each fiscal year. And then finally, many of you may remember from last year's call, there is an intent to have transfers to the Clean Energy Fund consistent with past agreements. That is baked into the budget, and that's $34 million for the current fiscal year. And then we see that stabilizing at $22 million annually through the end of the planning horizon. So hopefully that gives you a sense of scale and our posture. And I'd like to pause it there and turn it over to Joan, who I believe has the next speaker up to explain how this will translate into the operating plan recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. John Williams, NYSERDA Vice President of Policy and Regulatory Affairs, will give us an overview of the proposed programs. John?
Great. Thank you, Joan, and good afternoon, everybody. Good to see everybody here with another RGGI operating plan meeting. And I'm just going to launch a discussion of the programs that we've proposed for feedback, and then we'll hand off to my colleagues here at NYSERDA to go into some depth into some new initiatives that, that we've included in this year's program proposal. So if we could go to the next slide. The approach that we've adopted for RGGI investments is still pretty much staying the same. You know, we are looking to ensure that we retain alignment with the regulatory direction in terms of the nature of the strategies, investments that we'll be making, primarily with a focus on energy efficiency, renewable energy, and you know, approaches, technologies, strategies, all of which can reduce carbon-based emissions and greenhouse gas emissions, all helping to contribute to our overall state goals. The types of investments that we do look at, looking at commercially available energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies. So really, how can we move and accelerate markets for products and services in this space? We want to make sure, though, that we are also looking at building capacity for continuous and self-sustaining long-term carbon reduction activity. Part of doing that is looking at how we empower our own communities to take on the carbon emission reduction challenge and how they in their own communities can transition to clean energy outcomes. We also want to stimulate entrepreneurship and growth of our clean energy economy in New York, as well as look at how financing and new financing approaches can help to increase adoption of clean energy and result in emissions reductions in New York. So looking at all of these types of strategies, we have developed this current 3-year portfolio, and that's on the next slide. And so just from the highest level, we are looking at that 3-year investment timeframe, $464 million, as Pam had indicated in our projection of our revenues. Here you can see a breakdown across the categories, renewable energy through energy efficiency, which is taking account of continued investments in existing programs that were approved last year, so such as our Disadvantaged Community Schools and Buildings program is still built within this energy efficiency wedge. We also want to make sure we're looking at innovative greenhouse gas abatement strategies, community clean energy, where we are looking at our clean energy communities being maintained, as well as some new approaches to community and stakeholder engagement, which you'll be hearing about in a little bit. Pam had mentioned continued contributions to the Clean Energy Fund, so this is in sync with you know, ensuring that over the 10 years of the Clean Energy Fund that we maintain that RGGI contribution of $250 million over that 10-year time frame. And so this indicates the next 3-year commitment to that, as well as other directed programs such as our Green Jobs, Green New York loan program. So these investments also, you know, while helping to stimulate market activity, also do contribute to percentages and look to realize benefits in low and moderate income disadvantaged communities. So that's things from a very high level. Maintenance of some of the existing program strategies, but now I will turn the mic over to have folks hear about some new program approaches that this year's program plan is looking at.
Thank you, John. I'd like to just ask Janet Joseph, NYSERDA Senior Vice President of Strategy and Marketing Development, to go over some of the new program investments.
Great. Thank you, Joan. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to touch on a couple of new areas of investment and continuing areas of investment in the RGGI portfolio. So we will be expanding incentives for solar projects paired with energy storage this year. And we estimate that we will be able to build out several thousand residential storage systems through the funding available in this program. And this is a critical part of our resiliency agenda. Additionally, we will be investing in community scale heat pump systems. You may hear those described as district geothermal systems or thermal energy networks, but these are a very effective way to advance our building decarbonization agenda, moving beyond a building by building approach, starting to go toward a block by block approach, and maybe even a community by community approach. So with these community heat pump systems, you basically have a piped network among buildings that can maximize the distribution, the capture of waste energy, typically harness a geothermal source. So we will be investing in a number of demonstrations to roll this program out statewide, and we will be complementing this with investments from the Clean Energy Fund. Next slide, please. So our Empower Plus program is a major vehicle for delivering energy efficiency and decarbonization services to low and moderate income New Yorkers across the state. With funds from RGGI, we will now be able to serve low and moderate income customers of municipal electric utilities, helping them to improve weatherization, helping them to convert, in many cases, from very inefficient electric resistance heating and potentially oil and propane to modern heat pump forms of electrification. So we will be rolling this program out statewide. And again, this is an area that is supplemented and complemented with longstanding investments in the Clean Energy Fund. This is a very important part of our agenda to provide benefits to disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. So decarbonizing transportation is a critical part of our agenda. With RGGI funding, we will continue to provide rebates for plug-in electric vehicles, seeking to grow that market share considerably over the next few years. We will additionally be launching a new program focused on healthy and low carbon new housing construction. So this will be a construction challenge working in partnership with builders and developers across New York State. We will be helping these builders and developers to advance all electric, high efficiency housing developments, model homes, to bring customers into these new high performing communities. And this is an attempt to try to build and develop the market as we position for more aggressive new construction standards in New York State. And this will roll out statewide also in collaboration and coordination with funds from the Clean Energy Fund. And you can move on to the next slide, please. And I believe Jason is going to pick that up.
Yes, thank you very much. Jason Doling, NYSERDA Vice President of Communities and Partnership, is going to talk about new program investments. Jason?
Okay. Yep. Thank you and good afternoon. I'm going to just take a few minutes to touch upon some of the highlights. First off, from a workforce development talent perspective, this is our umbrella classification for on-the-job training, which is really our comprehensive approach to giving new individuals entering a clean energy job or individuals who are transitioning from a fossil job into this space, and compensates for up to 75% of a new worker's wages during the on-the-job training portion for up to 6 months. In particular, when someone is coming from a priority population or from within a disadvantaged community. So it's a pretty critical initiative. There's a long definition on our website of what's considered a priority population, but just to give some examples, that includes veterans, individuals with disabilities, low-income individuals, those who were previously incarcerated or homeless. So there are some other examples, but that gives you a sense of what's included there. just to put a number to what this has accomplished in the past, since the program's inception in total through on-the-job training, we've had 804 people trained. 30% of those people have been from priority populations or disadvantaged communities. And the two most significant sectors that have been trained has been high efficiency heating, ventilation, air conditioning, heat pumps, as well as energy efficiency. I'll just further note this is an area in the next year that we're really looking to lean into, going beyond training individuals to working with partners to making sure these individuals have access to good family sustaining jobs and long-standing jobs. If we could move to the next slide, please. The Clean Energy Hubs is a pretty major initiative that was announced earlier this year that has a solicitation on the street. Both the hubs and the climate action, consumer awareness, and education work are really focused on supporting engagement with residents within communities on not only clean energy programs and opportunities those hold for them, but also addressing local resident needs. The funding included here will expand what's available within the Clean Energy Hubs to over $50 million over 4 years. And that will establish a hub in each of the state's 10 economic development regions and up to 3 hubs in New York City to adequately serve the population of those regions. Both these initiatives together will help with things such as providing education to community members and residents about energy programs through NYSERDA or through the local utility, helping with community campaigns. That could be solar campaigns, energy efficiency campaigns, clean heat campaigns, developing outreach strategies to elevate the needs of residents within the local community, especially within disadvantaged, historically underserved communities, so that there are more opportunities for those individuals to participate in program and policy development. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, one of the other areas that the hubs will be helping us with is helping with connecting the dots with individuals from the local community who have been trained in a clean energy job and making sure that they have every opportunity to know where those jobs exist. That concludes my portion, and happy to take any questions as we move further. Thank you, Joan.
You're welcome. Please remember, if you have questions, to put it in writing in the question and answer feature. And with that, I'd like to hand the mic back to John Williams, Vice President of Policy and Regulatory Affairs. John?
Great, thanks, Joan. And I'm happy to present on a couple of new research agenda items that that we believe can advance not only the RGGI mission, but also think about how we can better inform activities throughout our entire statewide portfolio of clean energy and carbon reducing activity. So the first is an equity and climate transformation research. And this is intended to establish a framework of study, right? So a body of work that instead of focusing maybe just on the environmental dimensions or technology dimensions, really looking at the social dimensions on what it means to have an equitable and inclusive energy transition. And to really take account of the lived experiences of New Yorkers who are currently in underserved or overburdened communities, and to utilize that research in a way that can help to prioritize the way we think about the benefit outcomes for disadvantaged communities. We would utilize this program supporting scientific inquiry that is going to be looking not only just at the solutions that would be transformative to realizing climate action, but also would be to help inform strategies to ensure that citizens can feel like they are effective in the activities that are being advanced, and that they are feeling that they are fully included in the way that New York State is designing strategies that are really oriented to benefit their communities. A second area of research would be to look at climate mitigation and resilience. Some of this work I would expand on the integration analysis that has been presented to the Climate Action Council. I'm sure a number of folks are very familiar with the work that has been happening at the CAC. This would also expand some of the existing integration analysis work that would look at the risks and vulnerabilities of both business as usual, as we think about kind of our baseline energy systems, but then as we think about various types of potential transitions that we are accounting for, how we think about resilience in those carbon neutral energy system options. This would also take an account of looking at some potential sensitivity analyses on land use and climate change impact scenarios, again, all of which would be designed to provide a fuller understanding of the many very different aspects of decarbonization and movement towards climate neutrality, even as we continue to just think about the technology and the market requirements needed to reach that end goal. And so that's our research agenda, and maybe we can go to the next slide. Another new program investment that is being put forward this year is in natural carbon solutions. And the idea here is to look at how can we look at technology as well as business opportunity spaces and start to advance solutions that lay that foundation for a bioeconomy in New York State. And so what does that really mean? So what we're looking to do is really be in a place where we have facilitated and established a marketplace for natural emissions lowering products, substituting for other products, and demonstrating pathways on how we can utilize both our agriculture economy and our forestry industries in means to try to lower that kind of carbon intensity of the New York State economy. We also do see this as an opportunity space to look at disadvantaged rural communities and economic development in those communities, as well as jobs and revenue opportunities for those communities. So a new initiative launched trying to get at taking account of the contributions that can come from our agriculture and forestry industries in our overall advancement of a carbon neutral economy. And with that, I think I hand it back to you, Joan.
Thank you, John. So I would like to now ask Jared Snyder, New York's Department of Conservation Deputy Commissioner of Climate, Air and Energy, and Air Monitoring, to please go over the new program investments. Jared?
Thank you, Joan. Next slide, please. So this investment will support the community air monitoring initiative that is required by the Climate Act. The Climate Act requires DEC to undertake community air monitoring in at least 4 disadvantaged communities across the state, and that monitoring is to inform actions to reduce pollutants identified in those areas, areas that are disproportionately impacted by air pollution. Well, Governor Hochul in September announced that we will be expanding that program. Instead of just 4 communities, we'll monitor air quality in 10 disadvantaged communities, home to approximately 5 million New Yorkers living in areas, historically overburdened by air pollution. And this initiative will collect that hyperlocal data, from really on the ground in communities to inform solutions to reduce greenhouse gases and other pollutants. The Climate Act requires that we undertake this project, this monitoring, in consultation with the Climate Justice Working Group. So we will be working with the Climate Justice Working Group to identify those 10 disadvantaged communities. And we'll also work with the local communities in those areas to really target that monitoring and engage the communities in follow-up activities to take advantage and respond to what we learn. And so as part of that, DEC will be making another set of funds up to $1 million under the Environmental Protection Fund available to 10 communities to help build capacity, help them engage in this process to make sure that it is a meaningful process that results in on-the-ground reductions in greenhouse gases and other pollutants. Thank you. Next, back to you, Joan.
Oh, sorry. So thank you, Jared. So with that, I would like to pass the mic to Chris Cole to talk about progress to disadvantaged communities goals. Chris is the Director of Energy and Climate Equity at NYSERDA. Chris?
Great. Thanks, Joan. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the progress that we have made in advancing equity and increasing impact for frontline or disadvantaged communities under RGGI. And could we go to the next slide, please? So, as we're doing kind of across the NYSERDA portfolio and as other state agencies are starting to do to deliver on the climate justice and equity requirements of the CLCPA, we're looking for opportunities to adapt program strategies or develop new approaches for increasing the impact of our initiatives within frontline or otherwise disadvantaged communities. So within the 2022 operating plan amendment, we're kind of building on some of the changes and amendments that were made last year to increase the focus of RGGI investments on disadvantaged communities. As we've discussed over the last couple of engagements on the RGGI operating plan, the allowance auction program regulations reflect the investment requirements of the CLCPA. So we heard Doreen and Jared speak about this a little bit earlier, essentially kind of setting the requirement that a minimum of 35% of the overall benefits associated with clean energy or energy efficiency investments or programs, with a goal of 40% of those benefits, being kind of received or otherwise directed to disadvantaged communities. So with the plan and the amendments that we're discussing today, we're estimating that 42% of investments or commitments post-2019 are expected to benefit disadvantaged communities. And so this reflects about an increase from the 34% of commitments benefiting disadvantaged communities from, the point in time where we made the RGGI Op plan amendments last year with the initiatives that were included. Next slide, please. And so let's take a look at the distribution of investments. So the column on your left represents the historic cumulative commitments under RGGI through 2019, and the column on the right represents commitments post-2019. As you can tell, looking at the chart, through 2019, approximately 23% of our RGGI investments were targeted to or benefited disadvantaged communities. With the programs and the amendments that we're discussing today as part of the operating plan amendment, we're expecting that we're going to see an increase in the investments that are targeting disadvantaged communities post 2019 to 42% of overall RGGI investments benefiting disadvantaged communities. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this slide provides a breakdown of the programs and the respective funding amounts, totaling $287 million. that we estimate will impact or benefit disadvantaged communities or in some cases low and moderate income households and communities. So this kind of list of initiatives, totals the amount of funding that was reflected in the previous chart, for post 2019 commitments. And we could talk a little bit more about any of these programs or any questions that folks have throughout the balance of the time that we have today. But let me turn it back over to you, Joan.
Thank you, Chris. So let's see if I'm going to open up our discussion now. Please remember any questions or comments to please put it in the question and answer function. And it looks like we have a question, and I'm going to read it now. Why aren't the stakeholders looking at preventative maintenance of all deployed cooling equipment, fridges, freezers, AC, for energy saving and indirect emissions reduction? The Carbon Trust has labeled it a major opportunity for emissions reduction. Richard Fenley is asking that. So Janet, would you like to answer this?
Sure. So the one thing that I would like to raise is that in our Clean Energy Fund, we do have major investments in something called real-time energy monitoring, real-time energy management. And through the use of sensors deployed in a building and analytics and various types of user interfaces, a building manager can get a better sense for the type of operational status of the buildings, and opportunities for preventative maintenance can be flagged. So while we are not addressing that in the RGGI program, we do have investments in the Clean Energy Fund that are really focusing on kind of a continuous commissioning, operational efficiency, operational performance through real-time energy management.
Thank you, Janet. So we do not have any other questions. I would like to ask the stakeholders to, let me just double check. Oh, we do have a couple other questions. My apologies. So in previous years, the annual transfer of $23 million to the state was in anticipation of a provision requiring $23 million transfer to the general fund in the executive budget. Has the current administration indicated that they will intend to continue that practice in next year's executive budget? Connor Badbrook. John, would you like to take that?
Yeah. Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Joan, and thanks for the question, Connor. I would say that we have not seen the executive budget yet. What we are partly indicating here is our planning through taking our operating plan from last year, and for our planning purposes and making sure that we are appropriately allocating funds for what we knew can be program opportunities that we could roll out in year one of this operating plan. We do make an assumption that there could be that allocation coming through the state budget in the upcoming year. Certainly, if there are changes to any of those budget proposals, those funds would be available for programming, and we would look to make sure that we were otherwise allocating those funds for appropriate RGGI program uses. But for our planning purposes, we do make that assumption, and that's really just what you're seeing in the proposal today.
Thank you, John. I had skipped a question. I would like to go back to it. And Janet, I was wondering if you might be willing to answer this one. The question is, would you please discuss how the RGGI funding allocations will foster investments in new technologies needed to get 100 by 40 reliability in terms of what steps can be taken over the 3-year time period under this draft plan amendment? Fred Militech. Thank you. Sorry.
So thank you, Joan, and thank you, Rad, for that question. Certainly getting to 100% clean energy by 2040 is one of our top priorities in our clean energy and climate agenda. And the question is specifically focusing on new technology. And what I will say is we are not using the RGGI resources to drive a lot of new technology development toward that goal. We are using some RGGI resources to support that goal. For example, we do have some work, as I mentioned, focusing on residential solar and energy storage. We are investing through RGGI funds in building the workforce, and part of that workforce is around things like offshore wind. But really where we are leaning into that very important objective is through our Clean Energy Fund. In our Clean Energy Fund, we are supporting a range of technology developments. We are supporting long duration storage, which we believe will be critical to that objective. We are supporting the offshore wind research and development consortium. We are developing a hydrogen roadmap and working with a range of other partners on hydrogen. So it is certainly an absolutely critical goal in our overall portfolio, and we are really driving progress on that through the Clean Energy Fund investments and supporting it, I would say, sort of lightly with the RGGI resources.
Thank you very much. So moving on to our next question, the 1920 operating plan amendment phased out the LIPA efficiency and RE by 2021. What changed to necessitate continued funding through 2025? Connor Banbrick. And John, would you answer this, please?
Yeah, sure, and thanks, Connor. And not to correct Joan, but it's LIPA, Long Island Power Authority. But can understand, like, you are 100% every day on our energy acronyms.
Thank you.
Thanks, Connor, again. You know, I think maybe that phase out was, you know, or that perceived phase out might have been a bit of a timing issue there. And, you know, we do have these multi-year agreements with LIPA for funding to ensure that we have RGGI-based clean energy activity occurring in Long Island. And so we are working under currently a 3-year agreement with LIPA. That agreement would be for our calendar years, 22, 23, 24. And so that's what the current operating plan is reflecting. It's a little bit off of our fiscal year, which runs through, you know, which runs from April through March. And the LIPA agreement is based on calendar year funding allocations. So we did enter an agreement with LIPA for the 3 years, 22, 23, 24, and that's what the current operating plan represents.
Thank you, John. The next question is at least 35% of LIPA efficiency and RE funds are required to benefit disadvantaged communities. Why is the estimated DAC benefit only 30%? In LIPA meeting, is a LIPA meeting that obligation? Is LIPA meeting that obligation in other ways? And again, that's Connor. And Chris, I'm wondering if you could answer this.
Yeah, Connor. So, so we expect that LIPA will be, meeting the DAC, investment, requirements, across their whole portfolio. We're just estimating with respect to the RGGI transfer that we expect around 30% of those funds to benefit disadvantaged communities.
Thank you, Chris. Our next question is, the CAC has pointed to building electrification as one of the hardest and most important directions, and that approximately $1 billion per year will be needed to fund this for the DACs. Now, how has this priority been accounted for in RGGI allocation? And that is by Irene Welser. And Janet, if you would mind taking that, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Joan, and thank you, Irene, for that comment. So I will say this is an area where we are very heavily invested in the RGGI portfolio. Let me start first with the new programs that I mentioned earlier. So certainly the new construction single-family challenge that we identified in one of the earlier slides, that will be focused solely on all electric new housing. So that's a very critical part of our agenda. We're seeing on the order of 10,000 new single family homes a year in New York State. We have to move quickly to try to influence those new developments and ensure that they're highly energy efficient and all electric, and this program will do that. The community heat pump systems, again, that is another way of advancing beneficial electrification. These will be largely geothermal based systems. So they're also heat pump based systems. So that's a significant way we're contributing here. I mentioned that we are opening up our Empower program to low and moderate income customers in municipal utilities, and we will be including not just energy efficiency, but electrification. Jason spoke of some workforce development additional funding that we will be doing, and a good portion of that will be helping to build the HVAC industry that can indeed deliver these new electrification solutions. We expect the clean energy hubs will be very much all over the topic of cleaning up and reducing the carbon pollution from buildings. Now, I do also want to mention, I didn't discuss it in the slides because these were programs we included in last year's RGGI operating plan, but quite noteworthy. We have two very big partnerships or very big initiatives that are focusing on building electrification and supported through RGGI. One of them is the Clean Green Schools Initiative, which is seeking to decarbonize schools across New York State, including with solutions like electrification. And another is a partnership with the New York City Housing Authority to decarbonize, to demonstrate a number of building electrification solutions, to put out a challenge to the industry to come up with heat pumps for apartment scale applications. And we will be moving forward with the purchase on the order of 20,000 of these units in 2021 and hopefully scaling from there. So this is indeed a very important part of the RGGI portfolio and an important part of our work at NYSERDA.
Thank you, Janet. I have another question here. Will any of the community air monitoring programs funds be used to supplement the capacity building grants coming out of EPF? And that is Connor Bambrick. Jared, would you mind taking that question?
Sure thing, Joan, and thank you for the question, Connor. Really, the straight answer is no. The capacity building grants will be funded out of the EPF. We think that an allocation of $1 million for 10 communities is probably more than adequate for that purpose. And the funding, that we talked about today that's being funded out of the RGGI operating plan will pay for the monitoring itself.
Thank you, Jared. I have another question here. has there been any consideration of applying Charge New York funds or other funds to support the secondary EV market? Again, Connor Bambrick. And Adam, would you mind taking that?
Sure. Thanks, Connor. So good question. One of the things that we are looking at with Drive Clean rebate as we look to update the program and use some of these additional funds is how do we increase our impact in disadvantaged communities and low and moderate income vehicle purchasers. We are looking at what we can do to increase incentives for or target the incentives more toward LMI buyers, including looking at used EVs and the used EV market. So that is something that we are looking at and hoping to do as we start spending some of this new funding.
Thank you very much, Adam. So those are the questions that I have at this point. I'm going to wait a few minutes to see if someone else has another question, or don't forget, if you have a comment, to please put it also in this Q&A function. Your comment will be accepted as written comment. So while we're waiting, I just would like to thank everyone for participating in this stakeholder discussion. And I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. I'm wondering if we could have the next slide, please. You could go on to next steps. So what we would like you to do is submit your written comments to the RGGI programs at nyserta.ny.gov by close of business January 5th, 2022. And the operating plan amendment will be provided to NYSERDA's Board of Directors for consideration at the January 25th, 2022 meeting. With that, I just want to thank all of the presenters today, the panelists who answered the questions, and especially the stakeholders who participated, asked questions, and are providing comments. On behalf of DEC and NYSERDA staff, have a safe, happy holiday season. Thank you.